Hi, good morning, everyone. To those whom had not wished Happy New Year, I want to wish you Happy New Year, guys. Thank you for being there. So this is the new year, and we are here again. And today we are going to look at so those ones who are following the front-end developer course. We had covered HTML, CSS, and the other day we looked at SAS. So if you have not watched that video about SAS, introduction to SAS, please just check. I will also leave the link in the YouTube description, and to those who are in the group, the link is also in the group. So you can check up, and you capture up with SAS. We did an introduction to SAS. We'll add on, of course, on SAS in the future with JavaScript. So, but today's video, we are looking at the introduction to JavaScript specifically. And this is going to be the first episode. There are going to be many episodes about JavaScript. So this one will be the first one, okay? So let's dive in looking at basically what is JavaScript. So JavaScript is a programming language, and it is part of the three languages of the browser. So the languages of the browser, we have HTML, we have CSS, and we have JavaScript. So HTML is the markup language, or it is the structure. It is responsible for the structure of the website, and the CSS is responsible for the looks of the website, but then JavaScript is responsible for the thinking, the interactivity of the web. Okay, so JavaScript amongst the three languages, JavaScript is the only programming language amongst them. Okay, so it is a programming language, and that is commonly used to add interactive features to websites. So it is a client-side language, which means that it is executed by the user's browser rather than on the server. So this allows us for creation of dynamic and responsive web pages that it can interact with users in real time. So in brief, if you are to break down what is JavaScript, you define it as a high-level object-oriented multi-paradigm programming language. So for instance, high-level language means that we don't have to think about memory management, how much this variable is taking, or how much memory it is occupying. We simply that whole complexity of memory management, it does it, and that's why we call it high level language. Object oriented means that the language is based on objects, and we are going to see what are objects in the future, but basically most of the data is stored in objects. And multi-paradigm means that you have different styles of programming. We can write the same. You can write your code, I write my code, and in different styles, but doing the same thing. Okay, and it is a programming language, means it is used to instruct the computer to do things. So basically, with JavaScript, you are not limited actually to do maybe only websites. JavaScript is applicable in very many areas, and you can see when you learn, for instance, the front-end framework. For instance, when you learn JavaScript from this stage, by the way, we have another course if you check on our website, which is like JavaScript for seniors. So where you do a framework like React or Vue or Angular. So at that point, you are able to build, for instance, web applications. Okay, so the things that you can do with JavaScript is building web applications. So the second one, of course, that is web applications on the front end. You can also build web applications on the back end, and that time JavaScript changes and it is called Node.js. Okay, and then you go ahead, for instance, if you want to develop mobile apps, we have frameworks, JavaScript frameworks for doing the mobile apps. For instance, we have React Native. It is the most of the trending one. React Native, and we have a course about React Native actually on our website. And then we have also Ionic. So Ionic can be also used to build mobile apps. And then for desktop applications, we have Electron.js. So you can see JavaScript is all around. We normally say learn once and build everyone. So you learn once and you're not limited to doing only one thing, but actually you build for more things. Okay, so right now, in most of the time, we're going to be building JavaScript. We're going to be using it. Some of the things we're going to be using it for instance, doing form validations, changing layouts, web layouts based on the user interaction, like pop-ups, sliders. All those ones are actually user interactions that JavaScript can handle. You have seen, for instance, carousels, product carousels, product pop-ups when someone clicks on a product and a pop-up of a description comes along. All those kind of interactions, animations, whereby we are going to be involving things like GSAP, we are going to be doing AnimeJS, we are going to be looking at things like all sorts of libraries or JavaScript. Make sure that we do animations with ease. So another one is making requests to the server, interacting with APIs. JavaScript there is website whereby we use Axios, we use Ajax and Fetch API, all those kind of stuff JavaScript can handle. So this is example of form validation, how we're going to be looking up. This is example whereby you can hide and show password on login and many others. So the first thing we're going to do to jump into introduction to JavaScript, the first thing is to understand how do you include a JavaScript file, or how do you include your JavaScript in the HTML page in the first place. Okay, so JavaScript, you can actually link it to your HTML page in two ways. So you can actually put it in the head, or you can actually put it in the body. So we are going to look at both ways, and we can also talk about why would you prefer one to the other. So I'm just going to jump into my desktop, okay, and I'm just going to navigate to our folder. So I'm just going to go to our folder. Those ones who are familiar, they know this folder. So I'm just going to go to lessons and probably the morning or anything. I'm just going to call this JavaScript series maybe. So here we're going to do all our JavaScript lessons. So I'm just going to do all our JavaScript lessons here really, and I'm just going to name the first one Introduction to JS. Introduction to JS. Okay, so let's just open this in VS Code. Okay, just open this in VS Code. Okay, so my VS Code is opening. Allow. Yes, I trust this. So you're going to create two files. You can actually just go ahead and create three files. One for index.html. Okay. The first one is going to be creating index.html. Let's just wait that one to be created. Probably yours won't take this much long. Sometimes because of more extensions, my VS Code it starts activating extensions, it takes some time. Okay, but finally it has created. So I'm just going to go ahead and create some two files. So I'm just going to create style.scss, and I guess at this point you're familiar with SCSS. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead, and as is creating the second one, the SCSS file, I'm just going to go ahead and create the JavaScript file. Okay, so JavaScript, you create it the way we create other files, and it has an extension of .js. So HTML has extension of .html, CSS has .css, SAS has .scss, and this one I'm just going to call it, for instance, app.js. So for it, it has extension for JS. So you must do whichever name you give it. And by the way, it is not a must you give it script or you give it main or you give it any name. You can actually give it any name so long as you can specify that name in index. Okay, so right now we have our three files. One is responsible for our markup, the second one is the styles, and the third one is going to be our brain or thinking or the interactivity for the web. So when you have your files like this one, let me first put our boilerplate in HTML. Okay, so I'm still having issues activating that one. Just a minute. Okay. My picture seems not to be active, I guess. Yeah, finally it is here. Okay, sorry for that. So now the first step we did it. So the first step, we created our JavaScript file. This is app. Don't worry about what you're going to write in right now. Just only create the app.js. And now the second thing is, how do we link our JavaScript? How do we link to our HTML? Okay, so now just as I've said, there are two ways. So the first way is you go to your body, and before the end tag of the body tag, so you go before the end here and you write script. So we use script source to link JavaScript. So simply write script, and it takes an attribute source, and in this source we indicate the path to our JavaScript file. So you can say // and select app.js. So this one, it maps to our JavaScript. So this is the easiest way and the one way you can do it. But since we are using it to linking things in the head, for instance our styles, so for our styles we would link CSS like so. Okay, we are used to this one. So you can go ahead, and I can comment this one. By the way, we can always comment. So comment here, for instance, custom CSS. Okay, and then we can also link our JavaScript instead of putting. By the way, the purpose of putting it here down is to make sure that it loads last. Okay, because it is going to be interacting with the HTML. So we don't want our JavaScript to load fast. We want the HTML and CSS to first load everything, and then we code JavaScript. That's why we always put it down at the end of the body, so that it is loaded last in the browser. But then, since we want to be organized, we can cut this and we take it to the head. Okay, so we take it to the head, and I can just put here also main JS or app.js. This is app. So here we put our custom JS. Now, how do we emphasize that? How do we emphasize that? it should load last. So we have a keyword, we add one more attribute which is called defer. Okay, so we put this keyword defer, and this keyword defer, if you hover it on it, it tells you this boolean attribute is set to indicate to a browser that the script is meant to be executed after the document has been passed, but before firing. So this shows that this script is going to be downloaded, or is going to be injected in last when the HTML has been passed to the browser. Okay, so we are going to be using, and I'm just going to be using this kind of connection. And yeah, so right now we have put our connection and test that our JavaScript is working. And let me just write here in HTML h1, let's go and say introduction to JavaScript, introduction to JavaScript, introduction to JavaScript. Okay, save like so, and we can just write some simple CSS. So I'm just going to write run WordSAS, and that one was going to generate my CSS here. Okay, so I'm just going to connect it here very well. So mine is located inside CSS like so. Come here in SAS, we can start with our browser reset, which is like margin 0, padding 0, box sizing, border box. Okay, and just want to write some simple SAS. For instance, let's target our h1. Okay, and let's give it background color of black, and let's give it color of white. Okay, color of white, and let's give it also padding, not to look weird. So padding top and bottom 1 rem, and on the other side 3 rem. Okay, so you just go ahead and view this in the browser. Just click on go live. Okay, or you, on the other way, you can just right click here and say open with live. Okay, other way it will work. Okay, so we can just wait to see the browser. Okay, finally it has opened, and you see introduction to JavaScript, and I can just change something here on the display. So you say display inline block instead of block. Let me just do inline block, and let me also target the body, center it in the center. So to the body, let's do display flex, justify content center, and this align items to center. So align items center. Okay, so this is great, and it produces this kind of result. So let's give it also height. You just give it also height. So give it height of 100 view height, so that it pushes this to the center here. Okay, so this is great. Our purpose in this lecture is not actually CSS, it's JavaScript, but I just wanted to put this in the center there. So right now, how do we know that our JavaScript is working? Okay, so let's just go to JavaScript and let's do one thing. Let's just say, let's print to the browser console log hello world. So this is, of course, the legacy first line like ever. You have to learn how to do it in every programming language, hello world. So we are consoling .log. Never mind what it means at this point. Just simply write console.log in just JavaScript. But what this one basically means is that you can actually go to the JavaScript. You can log to the console, or you can print out hello world. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the browser. Okay, and you can see there is actually nothing of now. You see there is nothing happening to the browser, but if we go to the console, you can see here we logged to the console specifically. So console is a playground for JavaScript where we can interact with JavaScript before the users see anything. So that is going to be like our playground before, where we test things before users see them on the screen. You don't want to do everything where the users are seeing them. We just want to be testing in the browser console before everyone sees anything. So where do we get the console? So we are all familiar, those ones who have been doing HTML at least, CSS, who have been part of this course, or at least you are familiar with these dev tools. So this place, we normally call it dev tools, and if you're wondering how I went to this site, right click and go to inspect. Okay, so this side here, these ones are called dev tools. When you are doing responsive and many other things, we use all these tools, selecting responsive elements, where we can look at all our elements we have in the browser. For instance, you can see in the body we have h1 and all other things. So we can actually go ahead, and when you click on this one, so some of you are seeing console or you're not seeing it. So if your browser has this enough space, you're going to see console here. But if you can't see it, go to these double arrows here and you look for console. So anyways, you can see the console. I'm seeing console here, and if you go to the console, you will see our hello world. Never mind about these other things here, and I checked these things. Never mind about those ones. We are going to see what they mean, and we're not interested right now to what they mean. But the only thing we wanted to see is hello world. And you can see it is even telling us exactly where it is coming from. It is saying it's coming from app.js on line 1. Okay, so when we check on line 1 on our app.js, you can see line 1 is console.logging this. So what is console.log? So console.log is a built-in JavaScript function that helps us to print some things on our screen or in our browser console. And what is the console? The console is a playground where we can actually do some simple things. Okay, so for instance, on the console you can write things like 2 plus 3 and you enter, it is 5. Okay, so you can see this is a JavaScript console whereby we can play around with JavaScript before really we go back to the browser. At the end of the day, we are going to be doing with the browser, but first we are going to be playing around with the console to understand the concepts. Okay, so in most cases when you're developing an application, you want to be doing your testing, doing all you are doing before giving it to the client or sending it to the browser. So the console, you're going to use it so much in testing out how things are working. Okay, good. So at this point we are good, and up to now you have just learned 2 things. You can create a JavaScript file and you can link it to your HTML. Okay, good. So let's just go to the next step. So let's start on the first JavaScript lesson. So the first lesson was in linking a JavaScript file into HTML. So the second one is variables and assignments. Okay, so in JavaScript, a variable is a named container that can hold a value. Okay, you can declare a variable using var, let, const keywords followed by a variable name. Okay, so you can see here we have let or var, my variable name. So don't get confused. Variables, actually we really use them in our daily lives. Okay, so those ones who did some calculus, or if you did math, you remember those days where we used to do things like let x. They could give you a question and they say let r equal the radius of a circle. Remember those things we used to do? For instance, we used to do these things whereby say let r equal to 5. Okay, where R maybe is the radius of the circle. Okay, so basically what they are trying to mean by a variable, you can have things, you can have some things you want to store. You want to store some values temporarily or permanently, as you are going to use them later. So let's just take an example. You are going for shopping. Okay, so you're going for shopping and you want to buy a number of things. Okay, so you want to buy maybe eggs. So you can just say, for instance, const eggs, there will be 30 eggs. Okay, so you can say eggs will be 30, and you can just say const egg price. So for instance, egg price is equal to 500. So you can see that we are starting to store some values, storing them in variables. So from this example, egg price is the name of the variable, and 500 is the value you are storing here. So why are we storing it here? We want to use it later. So instead of keeping on using 500, we simply use egg price to reference to this 500. So you see, we have stored our 500 value into egg price. So every time we want to use, want to do anything with 500, we simply call upon egg price. And this can really be useful in the future. If you want to change, if the price changes, you simply change in one place instead of changing all over all the places. Okay, so we can just actually log them on the console by saying console.log egg price. Okay, so we can log it to the console to see if we can actually use it. So you can see, if you go to the console, we have 500. Okay, that is great. So now this is what we call a variable, and this is what we call a value. Okay, and in this case, 500, in this case, this equal sign is what we call an assignment operator. So we are trying to assign 500, we are assigning it to egg price. Okay, so that is great. So right now we have learned how to create a variable in JavaScript. And we said we can create it with three things. You can create it, for instance, using const. Another one is rate. So for instance, we can just say rate shopping location be equal to maybe like a shopping center. So you see, we can actually even store strings. So you can store a characters or words, and you can see I've used it shopping location. So shopping location is a variable I'm creating to store this value. Okay, you can even go ahead and use var. Okay, so you can say var and you give the name, and for instance var sugar price, and you can say it is 37. Okay, so of course these amounts, they are in UGX. Those who are watching and they are wondering if these are dollars, they are not dollars, they are just UGX. So you can console.log, we can console.log like sugar price. Okay, and you can see on the console we have 3,000. Okay, so really this is basically how we create a variable. You have something to store, or you have a value you want to store. For instance, this 3,000, it is hard to keep on recording 3,000, but you can just store it in a variable called sugar price, and every time you want to refer to 3,000, you simply call sugar price. Okay, Okay, so that is what we call variables and assigning variables. So one thing that we want to talk about variables though is actually the naming. So you can see I came up with some names, sugar price, and how I'm writing them. If you are curious, you can see there is a way I'm writing them. So let's just dive in and see what are the rules of creating variables. So variables have some rules you have to follow to name them. So the first rule for sure is you cannot start with a number. So just know you cannot start a number, a variable. You cannot name your variable starting with a number. Simply start with letters or an underscore or a dollar sign. All those ones are accepted. Okay? But you cannot start with a number. That is one. The most common one that people mess up is variable names are case sensitive. This one I'm just going to repeat. Variable names are case sensitive. So to demonstrate that, if you came here, you see we have eggs. So if I came here and I console.log eggs, if I say eggs, you are going to see on the console that we have 30 here. Okay? But if I put capital X, so if this is the same thing, okay, someone can argue that this X is same as this one since they are all X. But if you go to the console, you will see an error saying an quote reference X is not defined, and they even give you the error. So you see that JavaScript is case sensitive. This X is not equal to this capital X. So small letters and capital letters are not the same. And either, even if I wrote something like this, it is still typically different. It is not seen, and something take note right away that JavaScript, when you are naming variables, are case sensitive. Okay, variable names contain letters, numbers, underscores, and dollar signs. As we said, they can also not contain special characters like @ and other spaces. You cannot put spaces or special characters. Okay, so you cannot name your variables, for instance, like this. So you can't come and say egg price and you put space here. So if you name them like this one, it will bring you an error. Okay, you can't put spaces, and though you can also not put special characters. I think like @ or something, you can see special characters, they don't accept them. Okay, yeah, good. So let's move on. We are just looking at rules, or we can use to name JavaScript names. And then the most important one, actually, these two are most important ones. Variable names should be descriptive and meaningful. So avoid naming things like R, const X, const Y. Just use meaningful names. For instance, you could say name of the student, even if it is a very long name like that one, or first name is Gerard. So if you wanted to say, instead of saying name, so instead of saying const name is equal to Gerard, okay, you would say const first name, okay, const first name, okay, const first name. So here it is more descriptive and more meaningful. That's what we are meaning by saying that. So another one that is very important is that we follow what we call camel case convention. So while we are naming variable names, should follow camel case convention. So there are very many conventions that are out there, from underscore convention. There are some very many conventions, but JavaScript follows what you call camel case convention. So what is camel case convention? Camel case convention means that compound words are written in lowercase, separated by a single capitalized letter. So what I mean is, if you're writing one word, it should be in small letters. So you can see here eggs. Really, I wrote eggs in small letters. Okay, so eggs, I wrote it in small letters. But if I wrote egg price, you can see that the first letter, the first word, egg, I wrote it in small letters, but the preceding word, I capitalized the letter. Okay, so they capitalize this price, and P is capital. If you see even in shopping location, shopping is in small letters, and L is capital. So this kind of naming is what we call camel case convention, or we call it camel casing. Okay, so camel casing is the first word is in small letters, the preceding words are all in capitalized. So you capitalized the first letter of the preceding word. Okay, so I think that one sinks in very well. And the last one is do not use reserved words as variable names. So we have some variable words, for instance, while. You cannot name your stuff, like for instance, while. That one is not accepted. Or you cannot use for. This is not accepted because for we already, you can see for is not allowed as a variable name because JavaScript is using it already somewhere. Okay, you cannot use it. You cannot use while. You cannot use we're going to be looking at other things you cannot use, but really there are some keywords which are reserved that you cannot use. Okay, so up to this point, thank you so much being there up to this point. We are moving on well. Okay, so next we are going to look at data types. Okay, so data types is a big thing in every programming language. Okay, but simply what it means is that, as you can see from here, we have different types of data we are storing in these variables. So for instance, in eggs we have 30, and you can see clearly this is a number. Okay, this is a number, and this 500 is also a number, and then this one is a text. Okay, you can see in this one we have a text, and even first name we have a text. So we have different data types, or we have different types of data we can actually store in these variables. Okay, and that one takes us to data types. So by the way, when you see me doing this one, this is how we comment in JavaScript. So before I move on, I can show you how we comment. So in commenting, by the way, there is a shortcut which is Ctrl/. So when you do Ctrl/, they give you this double slash, which is one way of how we comment. So we can just say data types, but sometimes you want to do a multi-line comment. So how do you do a multi-line comment? So do this, and inside this put these two stars. Okay, so it is a slash star star slash. So you can write inside here, you can write all the things you want. This is what we call multi-line commenting, and this is single line commenting. So here I'm just going to put data types. So in data types we have two types of data types. So in JavaScript we have two data types. Okay, and the first one is what we call primitive data type. Okay, and the second one is called objects. So the second one is objects. Okay, so of course at this time you can be wondering, why are we studying data types? Of course, we are going to be dealing most of the times with data. So understanding data very well, and it gives you the capacity to manipulate it. So you have to understand the data and how it looks like, so that you can be able to work with it. Okay, so we have two data types really in JavaScript. So the first one is primitive data types, and the second one is objects. So let's first look at primitive data types. Okay, so let me just maybe make go out here and make another comment, and I say primitive data type. Okay, and I can make this one into a marked line, so that we can write inside. So now, what are the primitive data types? Okay, primitive data types, these are the data types that actually store a single value. Okay, so you have seen all the things we have been doing, for instance, const, egg, or eggs, let me just use this one of eggs, and we gave it 30. So we did something like this. So here we are storing one variable is storing one value. Okay, you can see over here our variable is storing one value. So a primitive data type are those data types where we store one value in it. Okay, so having said that one, we have different types of primitive data types. Okay, so the first one are numbers. Okay, so numbers, these ones are the ones you can define. For instance, 1, okay, 2, maybe 500, 40.5, or 0.6. All these ones are examples of numbers. So numbers is one of the primitive data types. The second one are strings. Okay, so the second one are strings. And what are strings? So strings are simply characters. So where we have, for instance, John, we have, for instance, Sarah. So all these ones are actually, I want to make this one in single quotes so that you understand that you can actually also put in. So strings, how you identify a string, it is wrapped in single or double quotes. So you can see here a string is wrapped in single or double quotes. So even if you write double or single quotes, it means that this type of data is a string. Okay, so next we have booleans. Okay, so the next data type we have is boolean, and here we have true or false. Okay, so a boolean is when we have yes or no. So a boolean is true or false. So a boolean, the values it has only two values, only two. The first one is true, another one is false. Okay, and you're going to see these ones, they help us in making decisions. Okay, these ones, they help us in making decisions. Okay, the first one is the first data type is actually null. Okay, and really this one is when you have given null, and so the another type we have is null. Now most times is we use null when we want to say something is empty or we do not have any figure to put in it for now. And the last one is undefined. Okay, undefined. And here is when we don't define anything, we define a variable and we don't put anything in that one. So don't worry, we are going to do examples on all these primitives. So for instance, let's just start with a simple thing. So for instance, const radius is equal to 5.2. Okay, and by the way, you have noticed that every at the end of the line I'm putting these semicolons. So this is one of the JavaScript syntax to show that this line ends here. Okay, so if you don't put it, it is mean that the line has not ended or that sentence has not ended. So if you want to tell JavaScript that actually I stop here, this variable stops here, or whatever I'm doing stops here, you end with the semicolons. Okay, so this radius, you can see it is a number. Okay, so for the strings we can put last name, so const last name, and you can use like mine, maybe JB or John. And for the boolean, for instance, const is married. So for instance, if you want to know if I'm married, for instance, you say maybe false. Okay, I'm not married. Then another one for the null, of course, we could just say const, and maybe here we could just say is we could just say really define anything here. Maybe we say age, and we can just simply put null. Okay, we just say we don't know for now, like maybe you don't know when I was born, and you could just put null in age. Okay, and another one we could just say, for instance, late. Okay, late, maybe location. So location, maybe where I'm located, and you can just simply define it, and you don't give it a value. Okay, so we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 4 variables and 5 variables, and each is having a value. So how do we know that this is a string? So JavaScript has got one operator that can help us to tell what is the value stored in here. Okay, so for instance, we could do console.log .log. So for instance, if I put radius, okay, and we go on the console. By the way, let's first stop the consoles we have up here, so that we don't see these ones, the eggs. I can put them, can comment them. So if you go down here, I want console.log radius. So if you go in the browser, you will see location has already been used. Okay, so we have all the location somewhere. So by the way, you cannot redefine a variable that is already there. So where is the location? Control F, and it is showing in 2 times. Already declared in line. Okay, never mind. Just put village. For now, yes, we let district. Okay, so yes, name it to district. Location they're saying is already defined. Okay, so just say district now. I think the error goes. Yeah. So you can see, we can see our 5.2. And let me just also stop this hello world. So this hello world here, let me stop it. Okay, so console.log radius is, so now we go to the console, we have only our radius. Okay, this is great. This is great. Now, but we want to see what is the type of data type stored in this one. How do we know that this is a number? So we have one thing we can check, which is called type of. So type of is if you hover, I guess if we, so maybe type of, I don't know, if we hover it, I think here the VS Code is not giving us some description, but it is an operator that we use to tell us what is the data type stored in that variable. So if you say type of radius, it will tell us the data type stored in radius, and you can see it puts here a number. Okay, so if we want to know for last name, we copy our last name and put it here. Last name, go in a browser, check string. Okay, that is good. Is married, so copy is married, put it here, check in the browser, boolean. Okay, this is great. And then we have age, so we are going to see that age gives somehow different from null. It gives us an object. Okay, we are going to see why, but basically when it is null, it gives that type of objects. So null, they have that type called object. Okay, then we have district here, and if you check it, it's going to give us an undefined. Okay, and of course we have another one which says not a number, but we'll be seeing others. By the way, primitive data types, there are not only 5, there are others, but these are the most common ones. Okay, this is great. We are doing well so far. We have seen different data types. Okay, we have seen primitives, what are primitives, and all these ones we have defined here are primitives. Okay, so we have also learned this type of. It helps us to tell you the type of what the data type stored in a certain variable. Okay, so far we are doing well in this first episode. So let's talk briefly about objects. Okay, so we briefly talked about what are primitives, and we said that the primitives, they store actually one value. Okay, that is one thing. So another thing we can look at is objects. Okay, so objects, on the other hand, they store multiple values. You can actually store more than one value in an object. Say for instance you are learning about students. So if you want to take data about a student, you would create a variable called the student. Okay, and then we could use here to store data. Now this is what we call an object. So to create an object, we use these two curly braces. Okay, we use these two curly braces, we use student equal signs, and we use those two curly braces, and inside these two curly braces we can start defining some properties. So for instance, we could ask ourselves, what is his first name? Okay, so we could just say first name is called John Doe. Okay, maybe Paul. Okay, okay, and last name. Okay, so could you also do last name John. We could go ahead and say his age. So you see, really we are using this to store amount of very many things within one object. So this object stores multiple values. For instance, course, okay, of course, is front end mastery course. Okay, so you can see we have multiple values that we are storing within this object, and that's how they differ from primitives. So primitives, they store one value in each variable, but you can see here one variable, which is a student, has actually multiple values. Okay, so this opens a lot of possibilities. Okay, and these values, so this one, the property here, this property is what we call a key, and this spore is what we call a value in terms of objects. So this one is name is what we call a key, and this one is a value, and an object we normally say it is in if I can put it down here, a slash inside here. Let me put double star, and so normally object, so we always have the object name, say student. Okay, and in the object we always have a key here. Okay, and then this side we have a value. Okay, so these ones, they end up being what we call key value pairs. So these ones are pairs of a key and a value. Okay, so this is really what we can talk about the object. But if you wanted to console or to access a value in an object, okay, you would access using two methods. So if you wanted to access a value from an object, okay, a value or a key from an object, we use two methods. The first one is the dot notation. So the dot notation, for instance, we could just say const, okay, student name name is equal to student. So we go to the student and access this name here. We say dot, and you can see, by the way, VS Code is giving you suggestions, and you can just say first name. Okay, so if we console now, console.log student name, you can see that we have Paul. Okay, that is great. If we wanted last name, we could change here to last name, and it would give us last name, which is John. But now the question is, what if we wanted to join them to have a full name? So instead of saying here student name, what if we said full name? Okay, if we wanted the student full name, of course we could join the first name plus the last name. So how do we join strings, or how do we join these two texts? Okay, of course we could do student first name here, and then we say plus. So we say plus, and we say student dot last name. Okay, so you see we have used a plus. We don't want edge, so you can see we have used the plus, student first name plus. So when we are joining two words or two texts in JavaScript, we use a plus to join them. If you now print, you see, let's print full name here. So copy this and let's put here full name. And you can see now it is Paul John, but there is no space. Okay, so if I wanted to put a space, what it is, this space here, it is not counting. Okay, you have to put a space manually. For instance, you say plus and an empty space, and then plus this one. So you can see we have put the space manually, like this space we add it manually, and now you can have the space there. Okay, so far this one is what you call concatenation. Okay, don't worry, we are going to talk about this one so many times. When we reach into strings, we will talk more about what is concatenation. But for now, just know if we wanted to separate or add space to join two words, we use these plus signs. We are going to see another method which is more simpler. Okay, so but right now, just to know, we can use this plus and you can add a space like this. Okay, this is great, and this is really what we can talk about objects. There is a full topic about objects and what we can do objects, but what you can just know already about objects is you can store values like this. You can access the values using a dot, or for instance, if you wanted to say age of student, so const age of student, or student age, actually student age, we could just say student dot age, or we could just use a bracket notation and we access age. So we can use this notation or this notation. You can use dot access a value, or you can use a square bracket access a value and you pass in the key. So this one, you said there are keys, so you pass in the key in double quotes I repeat, in double quotes, you pass in the key, you will access this one. So if we console now, so let me just put our console.log down here. And by the way, you are seeing how we are using our console.log every time. Okay, so you can see it is 30 here. Okay, and if you check, it is 30 here. Okay, so fine, this is great. And now what I know is everyone is wondering, so JB, what how is this actually related to HTML? Because everything we are doing seems we are doing it in JavaScript, and we are accessing everything on the console. Of course, this can be a big worry actually when you are starting. You will see that actually people, even when I was studying, even me, JavaScript, we are always working with the console. And my question was, so how are we doing with, how am I going to apply it in my project? Like, how am I going to do project in the browser? But to tell you the fact is, you cannot start right away accessing, manipulating things in. So the purpose of JavaScript really is to manipulate HTML at the end of the day. But there is no way we can start manipulating the HTML if we actually don't know how to speak the JavaScript language. Okay? So it's like when you are just learning a new language, you are not going to start preaching in that language, doing the preaching, doing the big things you can do with the language. No. If you are learning English, the first step is you start diving, learning the grammar, learning the vocabulary, and then when you master something, you start applying it now to do conversations, to do the preaching, to do other things you can do with the English vocabulary. Okay, so even in JavaScript, really what we are doing right now is we are familiarizing ourselves with actually the language. Okay, so we are trying to understand how do we navigate around, how do we test around the things, how do we, do some simple things with the language before we dive into deep waters. But surely, if we are going to see, we have a lot coming up next. If you see my slides, you can see in the future we have projects. If you look in the future, we have projects where we're going to be interacting with the browser and many other things really. So at this point, you don't have to worry about how we are interacting. We are moving at a steady progress, and I don't want this tutorial to exceed here. I just want it to stop there for now. We are going to resume from there. So at least the takeaway from this lecture is, one, we have learned how to link JavaScript to HTML. That is very important. And secondly, we have learned that we can link it in our head and we use a defer keyword. Secondly, we have learned how to make variables and the rules of making variables. We have gone through them and we are good at making variables right now. Thirdly, we looked at data types. Okay, we went ahead and looked at data types, where we looked at primitives, what are primitives, and we also looked at objects. Okay, so we looked at objects and primitives, what are primitives, okay, and what are objects. We even tried to access, we did examples with primitives, we also did example on objects. So we saw even how to access some values with a dot notation and many other things. Okay, so coming up next is going to be these ones. We looked at, by the way, these ones, data types. Okay, so we saw at primitives there are 5 strings, number, boolean, null, and undefined. And we even went ahead and dived into, we looked at how we can check the type, the data type of a certain stuff. And we also went ahead and did, of course, an example on objects, how to access some figures on objects. And what we ended up doing. So coming up next, so after doing all those ones, coming up next is going to be JavaScript operators. So we are going to dive in and we see operators. So in the next lesson, we are going to look at JavaScript operators, whereby we can learn more on manipulating our data and continuing to learn the JavaScript language, so that we have the ability to make the web applications that we have been dreaming of. So thank you so much for being around, and even for those who have attended. And to please make sure you subscribe if you're watching this from YouTube. Subscribe to our channel, and more stuff coming up next. So yeah, you can also link. I'm just going to put in the link description. I'm just going to put in the going to our course. If you have not signed up for our course, you can check the course, and then you can enroll anytime. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.